Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the session on workload mobility and cloud data management. My name is Blake von Brockdorf. I am a senior technical partner manager with Veeam. My role in the company is to work with partners such as PDS to make sure that their technical staff is up to date and current with everything that we're always releasing and doing, and come up with new strategies and teach best practices concerning what's going on in the industry. And today, we want to talk to you about the importance of the workload mobility and cloud data management and what those things truly mean. So, with that, to get us started in it, though, we want to look at trends that we're seeing today. And I don't think anybody's surprised to see the first one on the screen there. We're looking at, for 2020, what a year so far. COVID-19 has certainly um, been a trend this year. And we've seen a lot of things come from that, especially in the demand that we've had to do in regards to IT from a transformation perspective at an insane rate. And with that, it's brought a big question about resource management. While we're always looking at resources and are we doing things efficiently, huge adjustments in the way resources are utilized had to come in such a quick manner in 2020. So this definitely reaches to the top as being something that was considered this year. And when you're thinking about all of the transformations and things that we're dealing with throughout the year, looking at the idea of security and governance and what we're up against because this data is moving. We all have things like Sarbanes-Oxley, ISO requirements, GDPR, the California Privacy Act, and the list goes on. And then at the same time, this decentralization of staff and how do we centralize it again? And the way data is flowing through those different scenarios and maintaining that compliance and doing it. So many of you, I'm sure, were already considering some definition of a digital transformation, and looking to potentially adopt a hybrid cloud strategy, potentially an all cloud strategy in some way. Any of those or some kind of digital transformation that's been going on within the company. So now the question is, where does this fall, in a trend and how you can adopt it? We've seen in this, obviously, from this year, Veeam came out of the gate in 2006 and quickly rose to the top, dominating the virtualization world. When we think about the traditional on-premises data center, just grabbing it, owning it as we evolved in private clouds and so on. And now we've seen this evolution into commercial data centers, especially over the last several years, when we've adopted some sort of cloud type of scenarios. You see on the bottom, whether it's Azure, AWS, or any of the others. Um, but what an acceleration we've had, especially this year, in getting to it. And well, we've been forced to it, in a lot of ways this year because of the trends and the conditions we faced. A lot of you were thinking about it beforehand, and we had things that were, and that could have been, what was preventing it even before. Maybe it wasn't even a lack of desire, but it could have been a lack of just having the expertise on staff, which is why you may contract with a trusted advisor such as PDS to make that work. You have some dependency going on in legacy systems that's eating up that staff that's going on, and expertise that you have, and it may have worked great before, but did it flex and move with you and be able to provide that portability that you needed as you're looking going forward in the future? Of course, lack of time and budget. That we're always busy. I mean, that's what we do in IT. Is depending on what you're doing and how it's going. We've all had our sleepless weekends. But the big thing that we're always having to worry about, we don't want to be the one that has the breach, and so always all that risk to consider, hoops to jump through. Is it tested? What platform are you dealing with next? I mean, a lot of things come into, preventing that kind of transformation and so on. So with this, wouldn't be talking about this today, if Veeam didn't have something to do with all of that. And we really consider that obviously we want to look at moving beyond legacy systems. There's got to be some kind of modernization going on of your backup. Being able to free resources and people is really important. Hybrid cloud acceleration sounds like a marketing term, but when you think about it this year, I mean, acceleration isn't even really the word for it. When you consider, the exponential, and they need to make a bigger word than that, an exponential growth and adoption in a hybrid cloud, teams themselves going from averaging 100 million meetings a month, before March, to by April over 5.4 billion meetings, and that was the most recent data, and we're in September. It's crazy where we see that come into play, and being able to maintain security and compliance during all of it. This is what Veeam is delivering to everybody today at this point, and we want to talk about how, and it all starts with what we consider to be an overall overarching idea of data management, and even just cloud data management. Because chances are cloud, whether it's Office 365, whether it's Azure, AWS, a private cloud, or so on, you've got data all over at this point, or you're looking at it potentially being that way. So you have to have a conversation beyond backup. And Veeam looks at it and realizes that when you think about all of the different pieces and components that make up your data center, whether we're talking about your storage, like your Hyperflex, your Nimbles, and your NetApps, or your different types of servers that you've got going on, and where's your secondary storage, and all the networking and switching and firewalls, all these pieces that are coming together, it really is about data management. And it's really about how can you bring all of this behind, or at least not necessarily bring it all behind a single pane of glass. That would be great, but at the same time could be, what am I missing? But how can you at least simplify the management of it? Bring it all together in these 5 different areas that you see. We're talking about having a cloud data management platform that looks at your mobility. Are you considering monitoring and analytics? You have to be at this point, especially if you have diverse platforms that you're supporting. How are we bringing it all back if something does happen? If you're a small company, orchestration is super important, because maybe you just don't have the staff to be able to focus on bringing it all back up. You need some automation to help make up for staff that you may not be able to have a budget to provide for. As a larger company, just bringing the sheer size of the numbers of VMs or other workloads that you need to bring up needs that automation to bring it all back. How are we making sure that in the middle of all of that, those ISO requirements, privacy, again, previously mentioned, GDPR, and so how is this all being met and bringing it together? So with this, Veeam looks at it and says, if you're doing this, you're seeing a platform all together to be able to manage your cloud, virtual, and physical environments. With this, we are bringing this all together as we're looking at this to begin with. All these paths and roads, for the most part, lead to Veeam Availability Suite and so on, realizing this is what we have today. Okay, bringing all of these together. Now, what does that mean, separately when it comes to the idea of mobility at it? So Veeam attacked the challenge of mobility and saying the issue that we've got going on is we got to look about the portability of workloads into the cloud. The adoption of cloud has been so gigantic because one of the first things we felt, especially with the pandemic and the trend of this year, is the immediate, strain on, trying to get hardware or expansion. You couldn't get things shipped. The globalization of it all was just difficult. So being able to adopt into the public or even the private clouds that were already set up, being able to protect across those different cloud solutions as you potentially looked at a multi-cloud strategy. Long-term retention, I mean, it's great to just go out there, let's do it, but what does it look like long-term for budgeting, especially when you're limited, and being able to even recover to these different clouds? And we wanted to be able to provide those portable solutions and that integrated management to be able to make that work. So cloud mobility was the first thing we really looked at here, especially from a hybrid cloud environment perspective. So this, and we said, first of all, with Veeam and so on. It is all about being able to recover into these clouds in potentially as little as 2 steps. Let that sink in. All right. Being able to look and be able to back up, restore, and have disaster recovery and as with cloud native workloads. Being able to take advantage of the cloud tier, as Veeam calls it, which is basically object storage, and have it be an air gapped alternative for things like immutability issues and things against ransomware. Being able to look at it and say, and have a solution that as you're moving around to these things is centralized and says there's no vendor lock-in. Veeam has no vendor lock-in, meaning we love our customers, but should you choose to leave, and very few do, but you will always be able to restore your Veeam backups without having a Veeam license. When you get a Veeam license, you are purchasing the ability to continuously protect your workloads, to be able to have our support, and every time we release something new that comes out, you get it. So those who were on our platform before, when we released V10 this year, you got the new features. When we look to release V11 next year, that's going to come with it. There's nothing that stops you to get in, locked in with Veeam, or and not from a vendor perspective, but we don't want you to be locked in time. We want you to be able to continue to grow with us. So from a mobility perspective, we looked at it in a greater and said it's got to be about workloads as well as a whole. So now we wanted to address this idea that IT leaders realized quite some time ago, cloud workloads aren't as portable as intended. And I can tell you, having been a pre-sales and implementation architect at partners such as PDS before I came to Veeam 2.5 years ago, and working on all these things, I've been able to move things to the cloud, especially in Azure and so on, for quite some time now. But the process has not been easy, and that's exactly what a lot of our customers figured out, and so on. And we were so excited with the fact that V10 really across the board now. We've been able to do it before with some platforms, but now across the board, if Veeam supports the platform, if Veeam's backing it up, it's becoming a VBK, which is our proprietary file extension for our backup formats. If it becomes a VBK, Veeam's backing it up. Portability of any backup, either on premises or in the cloud, to AWS, Azure, Azure Stack, all of that, potentially with some of these 2 steps to be able to do some of those restores, to be able to make that happen. We can move it. Genuinely talking about an easy workload mobility of whether it's using our traditional Veeam backup and replication product, as you all know. We have our Veeam Backup Community Edition, which is VBR for people who have 10 workloads or less, free and available to the community for the really small customers. It was our giving back, our agents, all of that. If we're backing it up to a VBK, we can take and move it up to AWS, Azure, Azure Stack, and back. You get up into Azure, decide you want to come back to VMware, Hyper-V, AHV, and we can do that. You want to go back to physical? Okay. You're in Azure and you want to move to AWS? Okay. We're all about that portability, and making sure you can get there. And it's important to understand that while we're doing this under a single platform for cloud, virtual, and physical. Now, I've been talking a lot about the side of the on-premises primarily and integrating it from the hybrid perspective, and we've been able to get up there for quite some time. We can put our agents in those workloads and so on, but what about the fact that we're probably putting far more critical workloads into Azure and AWS than we have before? And we need to be able to get into the protection of those critical workloads in a more native fashion. So that's where we can look at it and say, as a platform, we have our Veeam backup for Microsoft Azure and Veeam backup for AWS. It's now been out for some time. And we're talking about Azure and AWS native solutions, cost effective, because you're going to see right up front what it's going to take to make it happen. Very secure. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But then we're looking at true cloud mobility, because again, I'm talking about, yes, I mentioned 2 other products that we've already got there, but again, they integrate back into Veeam backup and replication. So we're again looking at it and saying we have true cloud mobility. Talk more what we mean in that in a minute, but this brings Veeam's notorious agentless backup into those cloud native environments and allowing us to utilize those Azure and AWS VM snapshots so that you can get up to continuous pulls of those snapshots that are up there and being able to back those up, to be able to get more frequent backups and faster restores. This is huge when you start considering, the digital transformation that we're having this year. Increased security, because we're looking at it and saying we can back up data from production across resource groups, across regions. We can store those different directions. And consider the idea of having a layered defense. Remember, ransomware, cyber attacks, all of this is a layered defense. It's not a silver bullet. So what do we look at that here? We're going across region, and so on. We can also go cross accounts. So, like, for example, production, admins don't necessarily even have access into, the backup accounts, subscriptions for Azure, AWS that are backing those up. So you can protect yourself not only from potential cyber attacks, but potentially malicious admins, and add in the idea of multi-factor authentication of what we and love this one. Talk about we were industry first in 2010 with this on premise, and here we are making this happen. Instant recovery anywhere. Instantly restore your Azure or AWS VMs in or out of place within that cloud, or as a virtual machine on premises into VMware, Hyper-V, and so on, or move it from Azure to AWS, AWS to Azure. Again, all about that mobility. If Veeam's involved in the process, we are making the magic happen. And we're able to do this because we can see and remove out that hardware layer so that we can then inject when we move into the next one the hardware layer that's required to run it. We're able to intelligently work with your data to help you have that mobility across those platforms and remove the headache so that you can pick the platform that meets the requirement for the application that's there. Wait a step further here. We're again all about flexibility, and we're all about simplicity to make this work. So Veeam has a universal license across all of this that says, as you're looking across especially this year at the trends of the different platforms, you're already running on, potentially you're on Hyper-V, and you need to do some VMware. Maybe you're going to mix, or you have some physical servers. You're going to adopt Azure, all of these different options. You have NASs to protect with file shares. All of this, we look at it and say, you have bundles of licenses that are based upon the number of workloads that you're looking to protect, and where you choose to put those workloads are up to you. You want to move them around, it's still the same workload. The universal license says wherever you want to go. You are in control of your data center. It's your data, you own it, you control it. We not only want to be the vehicle that gets you there, we definitely don't want to be the roadblock. We want to be able to facilitate how you're getting to that next stage. So with that, we like to say, when we look at the trends and the craziness of what's going on this year, with COVID-19 to, your own digital transformation, consider the idea behind workload mobility, that Veeam is looking to bring simplicity, flexibility, and reliability, all the abilities to the table to make this easy, simple, flexible for your environment with a solution that has definitely proven itself over time at this point. So I hope you guys really enjoyed everything that you learned here today, and definitely make sure to follow up with PDS to talk about potential Veeam opportunities, how we can expand what you have, how you can take advantage of the different things that are here, and how we can help you along with your digital transformation journey. Thank you so much for attending, and enjoy all of your other sessions.